For now. All right, perfect. So we have on call today Jason James from HCP Portals and Media Manager. Title on LinkedIn says Entrepreneur, Educator, and Technical Architect. I think that's a pretty decent combination. But I would like our audience to know a little bit about Jason. And today's topic is going to be discussing some issues, challenges, and interesting things around healthcare interoperability. So Jason, the audience and us, we'd love to hear something about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
About myself, okay. So I started, so hcpportals.com is the brand name. The company is Knowledge Management Technology. I started that in 2016. It is so HCP is healthcare provider. So it's a healthcare provider knowledge and learning management portal platform. Mostly we work with pharmaceutical manufacturers and healthcare providers. So these portals are, say, educational repositories on different brands and therapies. Since 2018, we've had partnerships with, I don't want to say their names, but a number of very large pharmaceutical manufacturers. I think we've supported about 5 million virtual learning engagements with healthcare providers on about 40 different brands. And then in terms of my technical experience, I'm going to say 2005 is really when the technical career started, and that was originally in aerospace with defense, U.S. Defense Department. And then I left there and went into healthcare around 2012. In that time, from HCP Portals, which is a highly integrated platform, it's designed for integrations, but back in aerospace, we were working on integrations with things like F-16s and radar systems, and then all the way until today, I think I've led projects as an integrations lead for top 5 pharma companies with teams as large as, I'd say, about 20 people, and dozens upon dozens of integrations that we've worked on. I don't do as much of that anymore because the company kind of keeps me busy, but yeah, definitely a lot of the topic of interoperability and integrations is something I spend a lot of time thinking about. So
excellent, and that's a very nice background. So how was your shift from the aerospace industry to the healthcare industry? Was that a voluntarily shift, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I was burned out. I worked on one large project for many years in aerospace. We reached a significant milestone, and I thought it was time to go. I started a business for about a year that was moderately successful. I sold that, and then just honestly, my move into healthcare was nothing more than someone sent me an email one day and said they needed someone, and I didn't have much to do. So it was Deloitte. Deloitte offered me a contract on a healthcare system in Connecticut. I was in Pittsburgh at the time. I answered the email, and then that led to another thing, led to another thing, led to another thing, and eventually, you get where you get, I guess. So
absolutely. Nice. And with technical experience, it gives you a lot of leverage, especially when you're working around multiple kinds of things. It's always a big plus. That's great. Right, Jason. So a little bit about HCP Portals. We read that it says it has become the digital engagement solution for life sciences. What would you say is one of the biggest win in this?
The biggest way that it's become that? I think that's probably an overestimation of its importance. It is still growing. So I think in terms of what it is, I mean, this business is very small compared to the big players are IQVIA, companies like that. Salesforce is a big player in this space. HCP Portals, we're still doing relatively well. Some of the programs are very large. We have programs with top 10 pharma companies, and some of the brands are very large. So we've had one of the things about farmers, you have to be very careful about what you say. So we've had some very large brands, but it's still a very small company because I personally have always liked learning technology. I think it's an interesting field. It doesn't get the attention that it could possibly use. And then healthcare providers are just, I mean, they are the science the scientists of scientists in terms of, your MD spends their life learning. So taking learning management technology and then trying to adapt that to an industry like the life sciences is an interesting challenge to me. So, and it wasn't being done in any real way in 2016. I still don't think it's being done by anyone other than us and a couple of small players. So, I guess I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, what we're doing is trying to or working towards building a knowledge and learning management solution that can meet the needs of healthcare providers and also deliver data-driven educational interventions for their patients that lead to better patient outcomes. How do we get there? I've been working on this now for 8 years, and every year we get a little bit further along. So that's
Excellent.
good.
Brilliant. Yeah, I get it. I mean, small steps, definitely. But, I think the vision and mission is, pretty solid. And, that's, I'm quite positive that it's going to work out for the best. What would you say, Jason, are some of, let's say, modern day interoperability challenges that you still see in the healthcare space, despite the fact that there are so many solutions, I just call them solutions out there, but what would you say are still the most compelling challenges that are yet to be solved in this space?
Yeah, I mean, interoperability, I've always said it's the I think it is the biggest challenge in technology is interoperability, and it has always been that way. So if you go back to 2005, 2006, when everything was on-prem, cloud was just even starting then, the technical challenges were just enormous. Now those are less so. Obviously, I think you would know that. I mean, you get things like MuleSoft, Boomi, you have APIs, you have web services, you have all the cloud and integration technology capabilities in the world. So that not in the world, but many more than you used to have. So the technical challenges are coming down. I think I would definitely say that's the case. But that doesn't remove the challenges that exist. So to think about a little bit. So what are the challenges? Well, I mean, one thing I used to say, so technical cooperation is always preceded by professional cooperation. So just because we can build an integration, that doesn't mean you're going to have a business owner and a system owner with anything that you deal with. If the business owners aren't extending that professional cooperation, then it doesn't matter how the technical side goes about things, how easily they could create an integration or anything else. The professional cooperation has to exist first, and that is oftentimes so. When you think about what you hear today, just the in the zeitgeist of what people say within these organizations, well, let's break down all the silos. Well, no, the silos exist for a reason. They exist because that is the avenue towards professional cooperation. Is you have to have some kind of unit around your system, your business, and your systems, technical systems associated with that business. So when you say let's break down the silos, you're really saying let's create a bigger silo. That isn't what you want. You don't want just, I mean, that's where you get data swamps and these problems with data lakes turning into something more than they should be. Right. You need certain silos. It's that you have to establish an organization that is capable to have the professional cooperation between the leadership in each silo so that they can work together. I'll give you, I mean, definitely within healthcare. So in my space, which is more the pharmaceutical manufacturing, reaching out into the healthcare providers, we have commercial teams, we have medical affairs teams. Medical affairs are usually your doctors, PharmDs, and medical science liaisons. Commercial, the sales. They can't just share data. You can't break down those silos. There's a regulation. Yeah. So how can you say let's break down silos? Really, it's let's find a way for these two to work together, and then those two business units have to work together. And then they have to be able to communicate that together to the technical unit, which would be IT, but usually is an outside vendor. Okay, so that's a challenge because now your technical folks, they have to be even better at communicating with not just one business unit, but multiple business units, because they're often the ones who are translating between not just the technical and the business, but also across the business. So the medical has to talk to commercial, technical has to stand between them and say, no, you mean this, and no, you mean this, and show it to them and demonstrate it and explain it and everything else. They really get saddled, the IT and technical side. It's not really the IT, it's more the vendors, but they get saddled with far more than they probably ever thought they would when they were doing the computer science degree, in terms of communication capability. So that is, despite all of our growth with MuleSoft and Dell Boomi and APIs and web services and all that type of stuff, and the cloud in general, the challenge will always be the communication between all of these different business units and getting that right. That's one thing. So that's the first thing.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing with integrations, I think this is a big one. Integrations are requirement exploration heavy. So the first requirement is always very, very general. We want to take products from over here, a product list from over here. This was a big one on the last very large project I worked on when I was doing a lot of integration stuff, which is years now. But we want to take product lists and get it into this system. Okay, that's a very simple requirement. It doesn't sound like much. Well, think about the pharmaceutical industry and what a product is. So when a product first comes alive, it comes alive in a lab. So somebody's looking at a molecule and its name in a lab is something like ABC123. Okay, well then it goes a little bit further along and it gets a chemical name or a molecule name, and now it's this word that I can't even say what it is, polymethyl, whatever,
yeah.
And then then it goes forward and it gets to the FDA, or it gets to another health authority like the EMA or something else, PDMA in Japan, like that. Well, they give it another name there. That's a generic brand name that gets approved. Well, how many health authorities are there around the world? 50, 100? So now it has 100 of those names. Then it gets a new brand name because somebody didn't like the brand name it was approved under. Now you have two different brand names. You have a chemical name and you have the original lab name. And the two different brand names are actually for each country. So you now have 200 brand names, or however many, maybe not that many. But when someone comes to me now and they say, well, we need to get the products over here, I go, well, now I have to connect into that medical lab system over here, who doesn't keep anything digital. They put it into notebooks, so we have to pull it out with the OCR, scan it out. Then I also have to connect over into the clinical team. I have to connect over into the regulatory team who's submitting this to each of the health authorities. They exist in multiple countries. So I have a health authority team over in Europe, and I have a different one over here in the United States. Now think about professional cooperation in terms of me having to go to every single one of those business and system owners and say, we have to somehow figure out how we're going to get all of this data. And we have to put it into one place through MuleSoft or something like that. And now we have to get into the system.
Right.
Well, you gave me a requirement that said, I want you to take products and put it over here. And then then you asked me for an estimate, which is another thing. And then I went and I started digging around, or a technical architect started digging around, and we found all of these types of things. We come back to you and we say, well, how do you want all of these different names formatted? And you understand that your database over here isn't prepared for this. So what do you really want? Next step of the requirements, that goes back to the business. The business has to talk for however long that talks. We've now moved our schedule out, and we have to do whatever we have to do. That challenge of the requirement going from the very general, this is going to be so easy requirement, to the very specific, here's what this really takes.
Right.
That takes, you have to redo budgets, you have to redo
enormous amount of resources. Yeah.
Everything, and most organizations, they don't realize that exploratory process, you could spend a year on that. And they're thinking, well, we're going to be done by next quarter. You're not going to be done by next quarter.
Right. The complexity, there are so many unknowns in between. And
there's so many unknowns.
You hit the right spot with this exact example. And this is what we love solving with MuleSoft. We are very much targeting the diagnostic space, the diagnostic laboratory space. It's because we were speaking to an expert a couple of weeks back, very interesting. I said that because of lack of interoperability, a patient nearly died because of a wrong diagnostic given by a doctor because two different systems were giving different lab results. And because of a unit difference between both of them, one resulted in a value of 90 and the other resulted in a value of 900. And the doctor kind of interpreted based on a value of 900. And it's chaotic if a minor problem like this exists. And at the end of the day, your whole goal is better patient care, and you're doing all this. So it's absolutely important. And what I really I would say enjoy about this space is you actually get to dive into the nuts and bolts of how those systems are communicating. And as a technical individual, that's something that excites us as well. And I'm sure that based on how depth of an example you gave, this is exactly just the right set of problems that we are collectively trying to solve as well with MuleSoft. And
yeah, sorry not to interrupt, but so take that example of 90 versus 900, go all the way back, because this starts at the pharmaceutical manufacturer in the lab. Okay, now you have to go pharmaceutical manufacturer in the lab, clinical trial system, all the way out to the system that you're talking about. How many, and that expands that from the clinical trial, that's 10 years. 10 years of time and probably 50 different systems before you get out to where you're at that lab.
Right.
It's an exceptional challenge. It's just an exception.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's just the right set of points necessary for this interview. Excellent. And would you say that HCP portals is also solving or may solve in the future any interoperability challenges like these?
Yeah, I mean, on a much different level, because we're talking about education, so it's mostly content, so we're not dealing with the providing the healthcare provider with anything that could end with somebody losing their life. It's not that kind of thing. One of the things that I look at, so because of that experience with integrations, I try to control. When you have had those experiences, you become a little bit of a control freak in terms of your systems, because you start to see where the errors can come in. What we're trying to do in terms of interoperability is think of every possible place where we might connect to something and build less customization, more configuration at every stage. So, for example, HCP Portals integrates with all of the different medical CRMs that are out there. So there's a Salesforce one, there's IQVIA one, there's Viva one, there's all that stuff. We build an app that goes into that application. So they load that app in there. The integration itself is just a username and password, integration username and password. That way we've built both ends, so there's no mistake, because then all that engagement automatically goes over there. Another area where we focused on, how do we figure the challenge of operability is it comes from a concept of last mile design, where, so I'll give you an example. HCP Portals is built on AWS, but we use it's an integration. It's built on AWS, but we have an integration into AWS S3. And then AWS S3 is this kind of place where, as a storage facility, all your AWS AI and machine learning services like Health Lake, which is used for health data analytics and things like that. We build the integrations all the way to that last mile. So we say HCP Portals, you launch a portal, you can code-free connection into AWS S3, so we can take all data, content, everything else, automatically point it to that place. And then you, whoever you are at the organization, if you want to connect that into Health Lake and use that AI service, we've already built it down to the last mile. Now you just connect in and you do the rest with it. It's a design concept, and we do the same thing with FTP. We do the same thing with a lot of different, probably about 10 different systems. It's a design concept where we say, rather than build an API, which APIs are great, but one of the problems with APIs in healthcare is now I have an API. What if somebody comes to me and says, you shouldn't have that? Like you can't give that kind of access.
Right.
Rather than that direction, we build code-free integrations out to last points. So the medical CRM is a last point, and we can go so far as creating the app for you. And then you go to that system and you do whatever you want to do with the data that we're going to push out there. It's a little bit different, but
Still integrations.
yeah, it's a little bit different, but it's something that it makes it easier for us to, I mean, one of the things with all technology that you build is how do you get it into place?
Right.
And how do and it makes it easier to get into place when you go that route. I don't know if that's a good solution to interoperability though. I actually think we're kind of going the opposite direction of where you would want to go. But the problem is interoperability is such a challenge, like because even if you build the technical thing, you now have the business problem,
right.
And you have the organization problem, and you have the regulatory problem, and you have all these other things. When you're building a business, I know in 2016, 2017, when we were just designing the first versions of this, everything I was thinking was, how do I just get the first contract?
Right.
And that took 2 years. So nowadays I can be a little bit more careful, but or a little bit less careful, and I have more people talking to me. But back then, nobody's talking.
Right.
So it's, what do you have to build, and just throwing it out there, and let's try to get something in place. And then
right.
It took a lot of time. I don't know if that's a good answer. I'll be honest with you.
No, that's right.
I don't know.
And
Yeah.
would you agree to this statement then, based on all that you described, that as of right now, and possibly also in the near future, there won't be a one-size-fits-all solution for these interoperability needs in the healthcare space?
Yeah, there couldn't be. I mean, there just couldn't be. Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's when I say I'm kind of going the opposite directions, because we've been building, it's not one size fits all, but it's certainly contained and controlled. But I don't think that is the solution. I think that's just, when you're a small business and pre-funding and everything else, I'm trying to get somebody who would use this technology. I think the solution, and so I think a really great place to look for the solution is what Salesforce is doing with IQVIA. For anybody who isn't familiar with IQVIA, IQVIA is really they are the data giant for the life sciences. So when it comes to prescriptions, like who has written scripts, when it comes to patient support, so patient support portals, they do a lot of that kind of stuff. A lot of practice-oriented types of things. They do all that type of stuff. They just partnered. Their partnership began with Salesforce to offer kind of how healthcare providers are engaged by the pharmaceutical manufacturer industry, the technology with that. So if you think of Salesforce is one of the great, I mean, they own MuleSoft, so they're one of the great integration systems ever made. I mean, they have probably, I think, in terms of their just the types of interfaces they have.
That's what we do.
Yeah. I mean, they have this massive number of types. I don't even know how many. There's like 14 or 15 types that they do, or probably more now. They're the big integration guys. You get IQVIA, who understands the life sciences and the healthcare. They're in it, and they start working alongside with Salesforce. That's how you get solutions, because you have a business. IQVIA understands the business of the life sciences. They understand how it works. And Salesforce is just this massive interoperability genius. I mean,
they have the data and they have the tool, and that's what
they have the tools. Get those together. I think that's where the solutions start to come out of. Not little businesses like mine. We don't solve things like that. Salesforce does, and IQVIA does. Yeah, so that's where I wouldn't look to me. I would look to them. The guy who's leading that, I actually knew him in the company. His name is Frank DeFesh. He's the new GM of Salesforce's Life Sciences division. I would say one of there are a lot of people corporate world who they're the Einsteins of the corporate world that no one ever hears about. He's one of those guys. He's going to be leading up Salesforce's life sciences division. I think out of that, over the next 10 years, that marriage between IQVIA and that division, I think that's, and MuleSoft, obviously, and their contribution, I think that's where a lot of the healthcare and interoperability solutions will come from those folks.
Very nice. Excellent. Definitely. And Jason, in the diagnostic laboratory space, are you also familiar with what's going on with that world? Is that related to your domain too?
Not really, a little bit. So I would say the only connection I would have into the labs would be we're working on some clinical trial applications, and they would be connected to the labs, and we're also working on some physician practice types of connections. But again, we're not, the labs are, we're dealing with very much educational, and also and so if a doctor is really, I think you probably know this, but for anybody who would be watching this, so if a doctor gives you a prescription, that's a pharmacological intervention. Okay, if a doctor tells you, I want you to read this book, that's an educational intervention. Both of those things can be used, or behavioral interventions. One of the things that we've been working on is, because we have the ability to take the engagement data from any type of content and move it into places like AWS Health Lake, where it can be analyzed in different ways. We're trying to position the technology for clinical trials as a data-driven educational intervention platform for things like population health. So if you want to do a trial that says, if we give all the people through a certain age this information, does it have an impact on the population's health over time? That's really as far as we would extend out into, even close to the lab, but we would never even touch the lab. It would just be, we would touch the clinical trial or the doctor, then they touch the lab. So I guess the answer is no, but I like to think that we have the potential to connect into those types of things through.
Nice, excellent. And you are utilizing, of course, the power of AI and ML with all your operational needs right now, or is that something to be planned out in the near future?
In terms of the use of AI, what we're doing is the design is there to connect and to get it used, but we have to grow into it for the future. We just don't have enough. We don't have enough projects right now to really, because AI, a lot of people don't understand. AI costs. There's a cost. Yeah, and
a lot of times it can just be used as a buzzword unless you realize the actual power.
Yeah. You can say AI supported, like HCP portals is AI supported. It is built to connect into. We're really connecting into AWS AI services. So Kendra, Lex, we've tested them out. We've done those connections, Health Lake, things like that. But without, I mean, when we're working on projects, we're working on half a dozen projects. Right. I mean, hundreds of projects before you can start to even think about just the month-to-month cost and overhead of real AI, not just AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a call out to ChatGPT to give us a little different.
Hand it over to customer support, and that's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite questions, and probably the last one for the interview, what are some of your bold predictions? I know you maybe answered some of them within our previous questions. What are some of your bold predictions in the interoperability space of healthcare? Like, what do you think is the next big set of solutions coming out that's going to be a big plus for the interoperability challenges the healthcare industry currently faces?
Yeah, I think I already answered it. I think if you look at Salesforce, MuleSoft, I think MuleSoft is far. I used to, on projects, we would say MuleSoft or Del Boomi. Now I think MuleSoft is too far ahead. Del Boomi is fine, but it doesn't compete with what MuleSoft does and just the developer skills that you have and all that type of stuff. I think you take Salesforce, you take MuleSoft, that marriage created a real interoperability giant in terms of what they can do and what they've accomplished over the last, I mean, was it now 17 years or 18 years in that time? So they're as far ahead as you can get. And then as their life sciences division, which is really just kind of coming into bloom, as their life sciences division starts to reach out, IQV is a huge monster, multi-billion-dollar company, and then they start to connect into other parts of life sciences, they'll get the solutions because they do not have the constraints. You know, they don't worry about budgets as much. I think.
Yeah, I mean, they're big players. Definitely, excellent. I mean, music to my ears when someone talks about MuleSoft that way. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. So
yeah,
of course. So Jason, this has been excellent. I think we have an excellent set of points from you. Very good insights, very good knowledge sharing session. We would love to share it with the audience. I'm gonna stop recording this. Can I just have you stay for maybe 2 minutes for after this?
yeah.
Right.
What do you need?